Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And today I am welcoming from Boulder, Colorado, Amy Lynn. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. Oh my God, I'm super excited to be talking to you today. It's one of my most favorite topics to be covering. And yeah, just already some of our email exchanges and just feeling your energy and just your vibe. It's very cool. So let's get into it because I feel like I'm going to let you do a lot of the talking. I'll ask questions here and there, but I just feel like there's a lot to share with the audience. You are the founder of Astrology Intuition, and that is an online business, but you have a podcast, Astrology Intuition with Amy, and also a Substack, which is Astrology Intuition. Your background was in trauma-informed therapy as a healer as well, and you have a bricks and mortar company, which is Body and Soul Sanctuary, and I'll let you talk a little bit about that. But essentially, you've got psychotherapy, trauma-informed therapy, you're an intuitive astrologer and healer, and you've got 25 plus years of practice and experience in all of this. Now focusing on into astrology intuition, you do one-on-one work, group offerings, and of course your podcast that helps people regulate their nervous system, realign with natural. And I won't say often, I'll say lunar planning, because you've got a lunar planning book that's about to go out on Amazon shortly. Rhythms to lead from inner confidence so that growth feels sustainable and I will say not performative. And you offer seasonal resources like most recently you shared with me, and I'm halfway through it, which is 2026 energies. There's a meditation, what the year is looking like ahead. We're moving into this new cycle. I could keep talking, but I'm going to hand it over to you to probably explain a bit more better than me. And I'm just
You're
going to let
doing
you.
great. I just have so much going on. I think everybody's picking up on how the energies are really quickening and shifting, and there's
Yeah.
just like a forward momentum that we can almost feel like it's just around the corner. And so I think I'm really matching that with all of my offerings this year.
Yeah. Can we talk about that, Amy? Because let's start there because it does feel like I know that we're kind of ending a snake, if you think about Chinese astrology and astrology, and we're ending a 9-year cycle, and now we're moving into the year of the horse. And like when you look and read about it, it's like, not this isn't just this is a really foundational, oh no, I shouldn't say foundational, fundamental time in the world, society at large. Can you
Yes.
share a little bit about this, please, with us?
Sure. Yes. So I'm using a Western tropical lens when I'm speaking about astrology, but it's so fascinating how so many of the different energy systems and languages that we use to describe the cosmos and the energy here on the earth, it all kind of lines up. So in the Western lens, one thing that we're really feeling is that a lot of the big outer planet transits have been happening. They were in earth and water signs, which does have a slower, sludgier kind of pace and feel to it. And this year, it's all fire and air. So if you just
Yeah.
think about like those elements together, what they do, that's what we're feeling. That also like the whole fire horse thing, it's just like so aligned. So it does feel like it's going to be a really big year. This whole decade has, any of us looking at astrology before 2020, we're going, my goodness, what's coming? What's happening in the we can't even predict this. And so it's been a real test in our human systems living through these actual energetics and how they're landing and how so much has changed. So we're kind of at this halfway midpoint. I feel like we sort of tipped over from 2025 to 2026 into like the second half of the decade. And it has this feeling like we can now take all the ways we've been kind of creating our foundations, kind of testing our load bearing walls, getting ourselves grounded. There's been so much healing focus, I think, in a lot of
Yes.
people have kind of gone deeper into healing trauma or just kind of learning about their own psychology, even on that level. And that's sort of like creating an internal foundation for being able to be more present with whatever's coming next, whatever these changes are that we're definitely going to be seeing because we have so many of the outer planets changing signs. And not only that, coming into a geometrical angular relationship with each other. that is rare, very precise, and very forward, ready or not kind of energy to it.
My gosh. So it's like to simplify that for myself, basically what you're
Mhm,
saying is that we've had to, like, the healing piece I totally relate to and understand, but it's almost like that the planets have almost, or the first half of the 20s was all around, upheaval, if you like, what's not
mhm,
serving you. And then we've had to go inward and really do the work in terms of like understanding what's going on inside of us. Who are we? What are we? Shedding the layers that no longer serve us to be
mhm,
ready for the second half of what is now the 20s, which is when you talked around the fire and did you say fire and air? Was it fire and air?
yes.
So fire and air. And so for me, is that what also then is part of the like the last 5 years and, COVID, and then there's this AI revolution and everything tech revolution as such. But
Mm,
it's almost felt like we have been stodging through at times. Everyone you've talked to, it's like
mhm,
nothing's progressing or nothing's moving the way I've wanted it to or anticipated it to, which
mhm,
is then every time, I guess what I'm asking is every time I've personally wanted to go external or push something, it's
mhm.
bounced me back into me. Like it's like the astrology or the universe. I call it the universe has just gone, "Oh, you're going to have to go deeper. You need to go now another layer." It's like, okay,
Yeah, totally. I don't know how much in the weeds with the astrology you want me to get, but there's Pluto, the
please
outermost
do.
planet. So Pluto being our outermost planet in the solar system, it moves very, very, very slowly. It takes almost 250 years to go one time around the sun. So it spends, you know, 14 to 20 some years in one zodiac sign. So once it shifts from one sign to another, it's a big, huge change from like almost an era feeling from one era to the next. And so for the last 3 years, we've been going through like a subtle, like Pluto kind of peekabooing into the next sign of Aquarius and then back to Capricorn and then into Aquarius and back. And Pluto's now been here solidly since late November of 2024. So it's sort of like now we kind of understand what Pluto and Aquarius is going to be. But what Pluto wants us to do, you have to remember, I take a very psychological, healing, evolution,
Yeah.
growth kind of perspective to the astrology that I do with my background as a psychotherapist. So Pluto wants us to grow and evolve. Pluto wants us to heal and change. Pluto wants us to figure out how the heck to be in our highest consciousness while still being in a mammal human body nervous system. And so Pluto wants us to go deep and dig. So there's been a lot of that as Pluto's been kind of tilting between the signs. That is a lot of going in, coming out, going in, coming out. And
That's
it's
what it
like,
feels like.
yeah, and it just has this vibe of like not quite time. And then we get these other two outer planets, Saturn and Neptune, that are both actually Neptune just did yesterday. I'm not exactly sure when this will air, but on March 20th, Neptune moved into the very beginning of the whole entire zodiac wheel. So I always tell people it's like the game of Monopoly when you go around the board and you pass go and collect $200. Like it's like a new start, a fresh start for the planet. And so
Mm,
Neptune just moved into Aries. Saturn is going to be joining Neptune in a couple of weeks. And then they're going to have a conjunction where they're at the exact same place, which is literally the very first degree of the entire 360-degree wheel. So the feeling of new, fresh start, reinvention, like finally we can do this. Aries is also this energy of doing, it's a fire sign. So the idea of like all the things we've done, the work we've done, the excavation we've done, the deep healing, the changes that had to happen, like it or not, which is another kind of Pluto energy, like ready or not, we're doing this. All that has had to happen so that we can have like our own structure and foundation in our
yeah.
highest vibration for the new next thing. And then on top of that, if this isn't too many confusing astrology terms, Uranus is moving into Gemini on April 26th. And Uranus is the future, is innovation, is let's go, and is moving into an air sign. So it's like flying in a spaceship kind of vibe. So it's like we take all of that, excavation into the new reinvention or the new dream into like making it real so fast we can't even like track it. So that's, I think, we've been picking up those of us who are like psychic and intuitive and like empathic, highly sensitive people. We've been feeling that coming, but it's like we just keep going around the bend and going around the bend and going around the bend and we can't quite see the thing yet. But this year is when the thing happens or shows up or we create it. It's a
Oh,
lot of
good to
creation.
hear that. 'Cause that's what it's felt like for me, and sometimes I'm going around the bend and I'm literally going around the bend feeling like I'm going crazy because I'm just like, and it comes to me to comes I have a couple of questions around this because how much control do we actually have,
Mm.
in
Yeah.
terms of, I've realized that as part of this whole journey and, like I'm big on astrology and I'm always looking for guidance, etc. But like there's times where it's just like the only thing you can absolutely do is surrender, but you've still got to keep things moving along when it comes to
Mhm.
business or, your career or whether it's life as well.
Mhm.
But like how much control do we have of everything you're talking about
Mhm.
in
It's a great
reality?
question. We get
Yeah.
this question a lot of like, is there even free will? When you meet with an
Yeah.
astrologer and you get a reading and it's sort of like, you just told me every single thing that's happening in my life. Do I even have a choice? And the answer is yes, you always have a choice. You always have consciousness. Your power is your attention and your consciousness. And you can be self responsible and do what you can with that. That said, there's also, I think of it like a synchronizing or a harmonizing with the energetics that just are real and do exist in our solar system, in our cosmos. So I think of it like, here we are, these teeny tiny little beings, these people down here on this little blue and green marble of the earth, and we're like receptors. And then there's the huge solar system where the planets each have their own sort of life force. I think of the planets almost like personas, almost like archetypal figures. And they each have their own sort of agenda or themes or something that they want you to be doing or working with. And so you have the planets in real time, which we call transiting planets, and they're affecting or kind of sending like an energy weather sort of to the earth. And then we're down here accepting it. And either we're aware that we're doing that or we're not aware that we're doing that. So I think that's kind of where the choice point is
Yeah, right.
you're in the astrological weather, whether you're paying attention to it or not. So the free will piece to me is actually attuning yourself to the astrological weather so that you can work with it in your highest consciousness and then understand also the very personal relationship of your own birth chart and how the timing is lining up. Like you mentioned, a 3-year block of time personally for you. And Saturn spends about 3 years in a sign. So I'm thinking there maybe was something happening when Saturn was in Pisces for you or something like that.
Leo, so I don't know. I don't know whether it was a Leo thing, but the last 3 years have just been like any like, I've certainly changed and evolved, but there's certainly
Mhm.
been stop, start, and more just inward. Like
So I'm
last
not
12
even
months.
looking at I'm like, I haven't seen your chart, but Leo is across from Aquarius. And I remember I was talking about Pluto's like stop, start, going in, going back, going in, going back. That's opposing you. Like that energy of Pluto going forward and going back and going and not being able to like go forward and
Yeah.
stay has been like pulling and opposing you. So that's a prime example of how, you know, you're working with the energies, you're feeling them, you're intuitive, you're kind of sensing like, I want to do this thing. I don't know if it's really the time. So you have choice. And so I don't know that much about your process, but I'm sure what you've been doing is working down at the ground level, like shifting your processes or changing your software, or like kind of like, what can I do to make this flow? And that's part of what, in that case, Pluto, the planet has been asking you to do is get really clear with what's going to help transform you to be able to speak your truth, Leo.
Yeah.
Open your heart, Leo. Bring this beautiful work you're doing out into the world so that now you're ready to do it. So it'll be fun. We'll have to take a look at your chart later.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It so feels like that in terms of. Tell us a little bit about the lunar planning. You've just got a book that's about. I think did you say it's on Amazon yet, or it's about
Yeah, it's
to?
on Amazon now. It's called
Yeah.
Lunar Intentions. It looks like this.
Oh, I love
It's
the picture.
basically astrology is so complex. And I'm always thinking of how can I get people to pay attention to it without totally checking out or getting overwhelmed? Because it is a lot of information. And when you
Yeah.
first, like, I'm always telling my students, I teach groups and classes and things, and a lot of people come for the first time. And I'm like, okay, this is a language and an energy system, but it's really a language that you have in your bones. You know it. It's like a remembering rather than a learning, but it does take some time kind of being with the language and the energy to start to remember and start to have like a fluency. So in the meantime, my favorite thing in the world is working with the moon because the moon is something we know and we feel here on the earth. I don't think there's really anyone who would argue that they don't feel something with the full moon, or at least even notice that a new moon is a darker sky. Like that's something that's like, so to speak, tangible to us out of all the astrology. And the lunar cycles, the new moon and the full moon, really kind of pin down or anchor us to the wider energies in the cosmos that are happening. I picture it like the moon is sort of, you know, like soaking up and absorbing all the weather from the solar system and then sort of directing it personally and maybe even emotionally down to us on the earth. So that's actually how I base my podcast. I do it for the new moon and the full moon. I do free meditations for the new moon and full moon just to kind of help people understand you can just sort of come and go from the astrology. You don't have to be nerdy like me and follow every single transit every day. And so I decided to, in this new era, I believe that people are really waking up even more strongly to their psychic and intuitive gifts. Like, I really feel like
Yes.
there's almost like a telepathic quality that's coming through. And that as we move more into fire and air, that's just going to be amped up even more. Like, everything is frequency. And I think we'll be understanding that more. And so, also, I think there's a, kind of a rejection of some of the tech vibes, and people just want like tangible, real relationships with authentic humans again.
I was gonna
So
get
I
your vibe.
love the idea of making like a physical book that you can hold in your hand and write on and draw. I'm an art therapist in my original training. So there's like, artwork and things to doodle
Very
and
cool.
color and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And then it basically takes you just a week at a time. And I just have like maybe one transit or just the full moon. Like I kind of simplified to put like an easier on ramp for people to work with the energies. But at the same time, someone with an intermediate understanding can kind of take that book and run. And the other thing I'll mention too is it's only for the first quarter of the year, because what I'm getting, what I'm kind of channeling is that the energy is moving so fast. Don't do anything that's past 3 months at a time. Like keep it quarterly. And that's like a personal note for
It
your business
feels like
plan.
someone asked me the other week, and it was like I kind of felt I noticed a real, and we'll come back to intuition because I've got a few questions on that, but I noticed a real agitation because someone
Hmm.
said, I'd love to know what your objectives and plan is for the full year," and I got really quite annoyed by the whole question because I'm like, my focus. I have a plan for my business and what I've got big intentions out there.
Hmm.
Right there, I just said I wrote back straight away. I was like, "I'm focusing on the now." Like, and I think
Yes.
this comes back to being present and what the
Yes.
next looks like, because how can we even predict what the end of year looks like when it does
Hmm.
feel like everything's shifting and changing and we're in this world where, that is constantly shaping and reshaping, and we are as individuals and like as a society, I just think that that is an old world, an old school mentality to be able to think that we could have a plan. Do you know what I mean? And so this
Yeah.
is what I find fascinating, because you must come up against, and you may not, Amy, based on the community and the people that you work with, but what I find interesting is I kind of position it as old world, new world, right? And we're
Hmm.
in this new world, whether you like it or not. And
Hmm.
so when I've gone into businesses and I'm talking about this soulful and this, you know, conscious leadership that still requires performance and all of that, there's still outcomes required.
Hmm.
It's kind of been, I wouldn't say it's been looked upon as, but it's almost like, hang on a second. But what I see is that intuition and the need to be present and have a purpose will create the performance that's required and the success, et cetera, of the business and the leader. Because
Hmm.
my intuition and my experience in the last 3 years has been that it's never been stronger, but it's because I've had to slow down and I've gone inwards and I'm hearing, I'm
Hmm.
listening more. Like, I mean, I'm probably just jumping around here in that bit of a conversation, but surely that, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I've managed to not really be in the business world in my entire career, but I work around it. I have a lot of people like here in Boulder County, it's a lot of startup energy
Yeah,
and like,
entrepreneur, yeah.
like a lot of neat, innovative stuff, but like very like engineer, linear thinkers sometimes. And actually do astrological business consultation, which is
That's
fascinating. You can pull a chart for your business and work astrologically with your business's chart. But
wow.
um, I'm seeing so many of that kind of person really open, like kind of crack open in a new way. I'm working with a financial guy right now, like super, spreadsheet charts of stocks, like that kind of energy. And he's starting to get it. And like, oh my gosh, if you kind of like can blend the both of the worlds, like sort of the
Yeah.
and it's I think of the earthly reality and the consciousness that's held in the cosmos and in the solar system. And you can sort of like get those to actually work together instead of like fighting against each other. I think probably Pluto being in Capricorn, for over a decade before this new period in Aquarius, that was very much that old world energy because Capricorn really rules like the old systems and legacy and tradition and that kind of thing. And we're sort of, I think, seeing sort of the last scream, like the primal scream, as people who have probably a lot of earth sign in their charts are kind of grabbing and grasping on to how things were, or, there's really no going back. This year has the energy of like the potential of potential of potential exponentially. And so I think that I like your language around having intentions, like a broad idea of I would like to do this thing generally speaking, or I would like to feel this way in my life, like to really be thinking energetically with the words that you're using and the ways you're
Yeah.
setting up your intentions rather than hitting a certain target or number or something like that. Like that's going to be, maybe you'll manifest that, but the energy is really supporting us to be in that just a frequency of understanding of things. And we have to be quickly able to pivot and adapt, especially with Uranus moving into Gemini later in the
Mm,
spring. Well,
Which
here.
is, I call that all that yeah, that non-linear, right? The ability to be able to pivot, adapt, be flexible, be curious, remain open-minded. There's a lot of bad, if you like, in the world right now, like from a political standstill, like from, climate, everything that's going on. Do you like from
Mhm,
an astrology and energetic perspective and even from a lunar? Like I'm an optimist,
mhm,
I believe in, everything anything's possible. Sure, we all have our hard times, etc. But I do you think we're moving into based on where like the changes and everything you've been talking about and this second half of the 20s,
mhm,
do you think we're moving into a more and this isn't asking you to do a prediction or anything. Is it
mhm,
going to get harder for us or do you think it's going to start to get a bit are we gonna back together more? Like, what's like in terms of from an astrology and you
mhm.
said,
Yeah.
yeah, weather standpoint, because it feels like
Mhm.
it's been really hard for the last however long.
It's been very hard, and in many places, it's more intense than ever, and I don't see that shifting dramatically soon, although the possibilities are opening up. So,
Yes.
to me and this is where I kinda bring my trauma therapist background in. When you're working with I'm gonna call it like dense energies, like lower vibrational consciousness of darkness, the stuff that makes trauma exist, fear-based thinking and the fear-based patterning in human nervous systems and reacting from fear instead of regulating yourself and being in wholeness. I think that that's what we're shifting towards. I think that's really why so many of us have found ourselves needing to do healing work all of a
Yeah.
sudden so that we can sort of like build that muscle of being able to regulate ourselves so that we can carry the frequency of love and wholeness forward, even despite how divided or intense or
Yeah.
difficult things are feeling on the planet. I actually wrote two very recent substacks on this, one about Pluto and one about Neptune moving into Aries that go deep into this. If anybody wants to check that out at
Yeah,
Astrology
definitely.
Intuition.
I'll share it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that. That could probably be a 2-hour separate podcast episode. But I have fire in my chart. I know you have fire in your chart. Like that we're optimists like naturally. So there's always a part of me that's like, where is the gold in this? And when I'm working with people who are healing trauma, there is a way that things have to get like a little bit worse or more uncomfortable, or you have to kind of sit with something kind of ugly and dark that you're avoiding feeling or working with. And you have to do that in order to expand or transform or evolve. So, on a collective level, on a planetary level, I see that as being part of what's happening. We're like squeezing the last of the negative energy or the old pain so that we can finally clear it and expand into our wholeness. So, that's where I bring in the optimism. As far as like predictions or timeline, we actually have this amazing, beautiful, super rare, super positive, supportive triple 3 planets in a minor grand trine happening, all outer planets that comes into focus this summer and then is really here like the wind behind our back for the next 3 years. So I see that as like a real positive chance to move something forward that we're creating from love and from higher consciousness. I think there will be more pain and more intensity until we have more of a clear, shared, coherent consciousness of
Yeah.
a directionality with more humans on the planet not being in their fear body, but being in their wholeness and their regulated state.
Yeah, which is that alignment piece. It feels like it's going to come
Mhm.
to a big crescendo for to then be like, okay, something's got to shift here.
Mhm.
I want to come to, and I don't know what word to use for this, but I'll give you an experience for me yesterday. Like,
Mhm.
in terms of just, I guess it's energy, it's timing,
Mhm.
like how much control we actually have versus how much control, like you said, where like these little tiny like things down here, and then there's the astrology, weather, and everything else. And, like I guess it comes down to this. I think this is probably more around fate. You talked about free will versus luck or
Mhm.
synchronizing. Yeah, and like something happened to me yesterday where I got a phone call randomly. I would never usually answer my phone to a private number. I was at a
Mhm.
cafe. I don't know why, but I answered the phone and it was this woman, and she's very well known, and talking about coming back to healing. And I had been thinking for a while, like, should share this story. And then all of a sudden she just starts talking to me 100 miles an hour, and she's like, hi B, blah 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 blah. We thought you'd be great to do an interview, etc., for a really well-known newspaper. And it just was like,
Wow.
and it was just like something that, it was just like a moment where I was like, and I went into, like, that happened now because, one, I'm ready, and two, it was almost like synchronized. And then it just kinda cascaded and it just happened all of a sudden, etcetera.
Mhm.
What do you like, in terms of coming back to control and back to, like, situations like that? Yeah, there's free will, but sometimes things like that, I just kinda go, "Whoa, that was taken care of by something completely out of my hands." And just
Totally.
that, again, back to that awareness, and I don't know what I'm asking here, but it comes back to, I guess, holding on when it comes to, even from a business and leadership perspective, and us trying to almost force things that just aren't ready yet. And yet,
Right.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't
I
know.
do know what you're saying, and I'm hearing it in 2 ways because one part of me is like, okay, you're really connecting to your intuition, you're trusting yourself. You were
Yeah.
don't It doesn't sound like you were even aware that you were even having an intuitive moment. It was such an automatic answering of the phone.
Yeah.
But I'm also hearing the astrology piece, which I don't know
Yeah.
your history, but there was a Pluto Mercury conjunction just the other day, and Pluto brings a transformation. It's like a cosmic wrecking ball that just takes away the old story and lets you be in the new story if you're ready. And Mercury is the thought, the idea, the connection, the sharing of the story. It's the storyteller and the messenger, which is totally like podcast energy, right? So they were together. And if you hadn't done your trauma healing, if you hadn't done that, that transit would have been very different for you. Because you've done it, it allowed you to be like ready for the higher frequency. I think of things in the world being like a spiral. Like we're kind of going around and around, kind of a merry-go-round kind of energy. But if we stay conscious and responsible for ourselves to be more healed, more whole, more connected, more loving, more, regulated in our system, then we sort of like get to the higher rungs of the consciousness. So it's a little bit choose your own adventure. I don't know if you were in a different mood or a different energy that day, it probably would have been different. So it's like you're syncing up or co-creating with the planets and with the transits. And Pluto is a planet that will bring you like it has like a there's like a it's very powerful. It's very much about power plays and control and things like that on a lower level, but it's also about empowerment on a
Mm.
higher frequency. So it's almost like you were empowered to be the messenger is one way I could make the
That's what it
recipe of
felt
those
like.
things.
It's like I'm doing this for all these women, and I'm like, "Oh, this is just so, like," but yeah, I'm intrigued by it because I think, again, I think what I want to get to is when you booked in for the pod and I asked you what's one unique insight or lived experience when it comes to life, leadership, and business, and we've covered a lot of this. But you said one of the most defining experiences of your life came from realizing that intuition isn't random or mystical in the way we're often taught. It has structure and it moves in rhythm. And like as much as yesterday, I probably, as soon as I got off the call, I was like, it was just everything was automatic, but I was like, whoa, like, and for me, there was structure to it. It moved in the rhythm it needed to move in because, like you said, I had to do the work and I wouldn't have been ready anytime sooner. There's just no way. Like
Mhm.
it's just this year. And I think a lot of the time, and again, I keep bringing it back to business and leadership, but also in life, we do think it's random and we do think it's, woo woo. And yet it actually does have a lot of structure and it has a lot of rhythm and it moves in rhythm. And then, like you
Mhm.
said, there is timing to it. And so you said as decades of working as a trauma therapist and after a long time of being an empathist, an artist, and a highly sensitive person, you began to notice something consistent. And I relate to that because I think, again, tapping in, healing, being aware, there's so much you can do with it
Mhm. Mhm.
and it can become something very consistent.
Totally. And I think, everybody is intuitive. I just want to say that. Like
Yeah.
everybody who's hearing this, you are intuitive. It's kind of clearing the space and clearing the channel to be present with yourself. And how I bring that back to both my therapy history and then astrology is that every person I've ever worked with, my own healing journey has always been about it's not becoming something you haven't been yet. It's uncovering who you have always been.
Yes.
And that really is what your birth chart is. Your birth chart, there it is on paper. That's exactly who you are. So I see kind of astrology for healing is radically accepting exactly who you have always been. And then the more in tune you are with that energy and you're just letting you're like self harmonizing, that's when your intuition can just be like really clear. So that's one way I like to think about um, even, I think maybe when I was answering that question for your podcast questionnaire, a long time ago, like baby therapist Amy would be like, "Ah, gosh, all my clients this week are coming in with like a relational thing is going on for everybody. And it just took me a while to be like, oh, that's just the planet. That's like the cosmic weather. But then being able to be in these intimate relationships where I'm working with people for years over time and seeing their lives develop. And I'm seeing how the more they're in there like radical acceptance of who they really are and they're really embodying that day to day that they are living in such alignment with what the transits are trying to say to them that that's kind of the intuition. I mean, you're still going to filter that through your own worldview and your
Yes.
however your brain thinks, but that's how I see intuition now. Is it's sort of messages from your highest self translated through the energies to the earth and then hearing it and actually
I
being,
love
like,
it.
present to
Yeah.
to work with it.
I love it. A couple of fun questions for you because I know you've got quite a bit on the go, and I guess it is a question on that. You work with so many different people, like from an energetic, astrology level. How do you keep your like? And we're talking about alignment and being out of alignment. How do you
Mhm.
like keep your own self
Mhm.
aligned in terms of because you must pick up on energetically people like you. I'm sure the minute you meet someone, you can feel like the energy and it can be probably really strong or really dirty or whatever you want to call it. Well, not dirty, you know what I mean? Like just like
Yeah, just,
tainted,
messy.
messy is probably the word. I'm not sure what my energy right now, but like, and coming back to allowing the intuition and the presence and the alignment,
Mhm.
how do you look after yourself? How do you make sure that you keep your energy and yourself aligned?
Yeah, I mean, I think it very much comes back to, again, your birth chart and radically accepting who you are and what you need. It took me a long time to figure this out. I have 3 kids, and those years when they were little was like so crazy and chaotic. And I lost my center during that time and had to kind of find it again. And now I'm at a place where I realize I need, I used to push and force.
Yeah.
And I have a Cancer sun and I have a Virgo moon. Those energies are very kind of soft and sweet and slower and present. And I was just like pushing through that, which was not being in alignment with myself in my example. And so now I'm so lucky here in Colorado. I live with nature. I can walk out my
Mhm.
door and go into the woods and there's a creek and it comes down from the Continental Divide. It's just this amazing water and magic. And
Oh,
so I
beautiful.
start my day with water and sunlight, like meaning being with the water energy and with the sunlight energy and just kind of getting myself grounded and present with myself and centered enough for the day. Then there's like normal life, get the kids to school, like all that kind of stuff. But I have a daily yoga practice as well in community. And that's something that I just know that I need. So I have to work my
Yeah, I love
schedule
it.
around taking care of myself first so that I can show up. I couldn't do the work that I do and do it well if I didn't really deeply care for myself for like a couple hours a day, which my old self would have thought that was nuts and like, I don't know, selfish even or something. But I've realized over time that my system really needs that. And I try to be really conscious with, I hold a strong container around myself, around the work that I do. And I do a lot of cleansing and release. Here at our brick and mortar, we have sound baths and we have
And
body
I love
workers, and so I get to
bath.
also take care of
Yeah.
myself in those ways too, which
So
is great.
good. So important. And again, bringing it back into this world we're in now in business and leadership, I
Mhm.
think what you're talking about is just so important. I call it active recovery, but we just don't prioritize it enough. And yet it's the one thing we all need to do. And my final question for you would be, or what would be one piece of advice that you would give? Let's think about the 3 months ahead, like you said, plan quarterly,
Yeah.
all the planets and everything that's happening, and from a western astrology perspective, and also
Mhm.
like in terms of energies and even lunar planning,
Uh-huh.
what would be one piece of advice you would give us all around, I don't know, how to focus or plan for the next 3 months? Like, what would it be? Like, that's probably too big a question, but go with
Well, I
me.
mean,
Yeah.
we're in this quarter that's like so intense. There's so much huge astrology packed into literally now for the next 3 months is like we have two eclipses. We
Yeah.
have the great conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, like never happened on the planet before at the 0 degrees point of Aries. We have Uranus moving into Gemini. All that's happening just in the next quarter. And each one of those things is big in its own right. Plus, there's lots of other transits happening in the background. So I think, having kind of the vision or the intention or like kind of how the code of how you want your life or your business to feel, and then taking it day by day, being agile, being ready to pivot, checking in, not being afraid of change, figuring out like what does like I've really seen like the beginning of January up until like mid-February, which is when the eclipses happen, as getting yourself set up for not knowing what's coming.
What it feels like. It honestly does. I've been playing with a few things going, I'm not doing this at this time anymore. I'm going to be like just protecting this. It's like
Mhm.
I'm playing Tetris a little bit. It
Mhm.
so feels like it. Like again, waiting to go around the bend of, but I think the bend is always going to be like a little bit of like, oh, here it is. Okay. Like what happened
Mhm.
yesterday. Okay. All right. I'm doing this now. Like, and it's not being random, but it's just being,
Mhm. Yeah, so making space to listen to yourself, like to just sit in quietude and just listen to what's here, feel what's here, meditate with your heart space, like those kinds of things. It's counterintuitive, especially in the business world. There's so
yeah.
much productivity and doing and not sitting, or space for creativity and for flow. Those energies matter so much. And I promise you will get so much more productivity or success if you slow down and do that kind of prep work for yourself. Like get the systems in place, get yourself centered, have some vision, but not like don't get too attached to the goals or the objectives, but just kind of keeping the vision out there and being ready to adapt in real time. That's a big skill. And some people, that's hard. So, like practicing doing what you need to do so that you're able to find center. Like, we've talked a lot in the healing communities around like being grounded. This is like, that's like an old term. Like, it's just it's like a centrifugal motion to your own source point kind of energy. Cause there's like almost not going to be ground beneath you, is how it could feel.
Amazing. I love it. Amy, this has been such an incredible conversation. And I feel like you have offered up so much business advice, like just in terms of just even what you were talking around then from a doing versus a being is what you're talking about here, like that quietude, finding center. I play with a lot with non-time, just that ability just to sit, not be worrying about, and yeah, I think that that puts us in good stead. But I can't wait to finish watching your 2026 meditation and, energy. How do we find out more about you? Where do we go? I mean, obviously Amazon for your book.
Yeah. So all of my my socials, my YouTube channel, my podcast, that's all astrology intuition. But I have a website that's astrointuition.online. And that's where you'll find a lot of my teachings. My free 2026 guide is there. There's links there to book readings with me because you also have me thinking about this. It's so amazing to work with businesses and to do just an annual read of the business chart
I think I'm going to get that.
plays out the year, like it quarter by quarter, you can like plan by it. And the businesses that do that don't have to, it's not a mystery to figure it out. You can kind of see like the seasons, like this is a season to push, this is a season to wait. Here's where the big thing happens. So yeah, I would love for anybody to reach out. The 2026 guide is probably your best starting point because it really gives you month by month and it has questions for reflection at the end if you like to take it inward and grow. I have so many other resources, but if you find me in one of these places and you start to go down my rabbit holes, you'll see all the other free resources and things that I offer. I have all kinds of stuff out there. So happy to help.
Amazing, Amy. Thank you so much. Yeah, I highly recommend businesses, get that annual consultation as well. I think we're going to see more of this in business. That's my
Mhm.
my view and my feeling as well as we go forward. Certainly something that I'm promoting and wanting to pursue. Well, I am pursuing, I should say. So, Amy, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, maybe we'll check in later in the year and
Yeah,
have
I'll
another.
talk to you after this quarter.
Thanks, Amy. Have a wonderful evening.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you.